everybody. What's going on? My name's Ryan Selvy, and I am the host of File New, the show where we go over creator news, we go over design news, we go over everything that you need to stay up to date and knowledgeable of the changing world for designers and creators. We're here every Wednesday at this time, which is 3 o'clock my time, but it might be a different time, your time, depending on wherever you are in the world. But it's great to have you here. Thank you for being here. We've got a lot on the show today. We also have an active Discord community, so if you have news or things you want to talk about that are going on throughout the week, I implore you to then hop into the Discord and share those links with us, share those thoughts. Also, Wade is in the chat, who is our wonderful moderator. He is putting in the Raindrop for us. Raindrop is where we put all the links for this week's episode, but also previous episodes as well. It's just a really good place to stay organized. We're on episode, 88, 87, 88, which is getting close to 100. What are we going to do for the 100th? I don't know. But hello to Winter and Bree, Tracy and Alyssa at YouTube. And hello to Robert, Oliver, Marcia, and Frank over on Behance. But we are here for about an hour, and we've got a lot to get through. So let's go ahead and hop on into the news. I guess the first news is Kara Sykes is here. Hey, Kara, what's going on? Welcome in. We're going to start off with something a little bit not newsy, just something a little bit fun to kind of get things started. This is a meme that I found on the internet earlier this week, and I just thought it was a really good vibe to start things off. So let's actually just start with that. It is by Angusbellyoung, and it is called "What Are You Listening To?" And it is Client Feedback 7. So let's go ahead and bring that up.
Hey?
What are you listening to?
Client Feedback V7.
Yo, hey dude, love V7, it's perfect, just a couple things we need to change. The color grade is great, but we're thinking, can you make it slightly darker with more brightness? Also, showed it to my nephew, he's a videographer, and he says it needs to sparkle more. Not sure what that means, you're a smart guy, I think you'll figure it out. Oh, and one last thing, can we go back to version 3? But anyway, go there, loving your work as always. Let's aim to lock V8 by end of day, unless my nephew has more notes. Cheers!
Hey man, what are you listening to?
Hey?
I love the toilet flush in it. It caught me off guard with how funny I thought it was. I remember, I think I watched it laying in bed, and I found I just started cackling. I messaged him immediately. I was just like, can I please include this in File New? But we've all been there. We've had back and forth with clients over and over again. The toilet flushing kills me. But just the idea of, starting all over and beginning again. Just fun stuff to start the page. But that's not really news. That's just kind of a fun thing. Clever saying darker with more lightness. Yep, accurate. Winter also says brighter and darker. But I guess we should actually hop into some real news, since that is the section that we have here. Also, I'm sorry if you guys can hear any hissing. They're doing something out on the street, I think with gas or something. And it's been hissing for the last 45 minutes. So sorry if that's coming in through the microphone at all. But let's talk a little bit about YouTube. There was this big event last week called Brandcast, where YouTube brings together a bunch of creators and advertisers and presents kind of the state of the platform and what YouTube is looking like. One of the biggest things that was a takeaway of this year was the fact that at Brandcast 2025, YouTube announced that not only have they been #1 streaming service in the US by watch time, it's also been the #1 most watched distributor of content across broadcast, cable, and streaming in the US since February 2025, which is huge. This is coming from Tube Filler, James Hale. And basically, this is just, once again, showing you that YouTube is no joke. People are absorbing and going to YouTube for all of their watching, more so than anything else, as, Netflix or even cable TV. And people are turning to content that is created by, not gigantic brands, but individuals that are now on uploading and creating video for YouTube. This is a pretty big, huge announcement. I know in previous episodes we've talked a little bit about how YouTube is really growing as a platform on TV, where people are watching, I think, YouTube on their TVs more so than mobile, which is interesting. So just kind of an idea that there is more ad conversions happening on this platform. And if you are sleeping on creating things for YouTube and you are a video creator, you should sleep no more, because guess what? YouTube is blowing up. It's continuing to blow up. It's been big for 20 some years, but in case you have not considered it, you should consider it some more. Also, speaking of which, this is something that we've also talked about with YouTube, is the fact that now YouTube is including YouTube charts for US podcasts. We've talked a little bit about how podcasts are becoming very popular on YouTube. People are not only just watching things that could be podcast like this show, but also they're now listening to podcasts in the way that you would use it on Spotify or iTunes. Is it even iTunes anymore? Is it just Apple Music now? And so they've actually introduced a chart of the top listened and watched podcast on the platform, so much so that they announced at the Brandcast presentation that they have 1 billion with a B million active podcast users. So if you have a podcast of any kind, you want to get it on YouTube, it is where a lot of consumers are going for their podcasts now. I myself also watch a bunch on YouTube as well. I'll put it off to the side and have it kind of running, or I'll even, I've had it even at the gym before where I've had the podcast up on YouTube. So if you go to charts.youtube.com, it'll show you the weekly top podcast shows for the given week, and you can go in and you can click through them. But, it has all, 100 of these different podcasts, and it's interesting to see that actively and natively within YouTube. This is not some third-party thing pulling the API. This is literally just charts.youtube.com. As a correction to my flub a second ago, Oliver was saying that iTunes still exists on Windows as well as Apple Music, and the store in Apple Music and Apple TV is called the iTunes Store. Yes, the branding of it is all very confusing. Take it as you will. Always trying to figure things out. We'll have our rebrand segment soon where we need to talk a little bit about successful and unsuccessful rebrands. There are a few cool ones that happened this week, and also a reflection on one that maybe they didn't do as well. Speaking of last week, though, there was an announcement from Adobe with some new updates to the plans. Creative Cloud Pro is what is being rebranded and introduced as the new plan going forward. You basically are going to have a decision between whether you want to stay with this upgraded Creative Cloud Pro, which includes a lot of the generative features that are included with your generative credits, so unlimited access, and then also there's some things like text to video or generative extend. And this is going to be a slight price increase that happens for Creative Cloud Pro users. That said, if you don't want to use generative stuff, or you think you're going to use it more limited, you can use the smaller downgraded version, which is available only for individuals. You can go into your settings and say that you want to have the lower one, which is a little bit cheaper actually than what you probably have right now, or it's $5 cheaper, and basically that'll have a more limited selection of features, but you get to pay a little bit less. And that's not rolling out until next month. And then even then, if you already have yours, your account isn't going to change until you would have your annual refresh anyway. So like, let's say that you just refreshed your annual membership 2 months ago. This new pricing guidelines isn't going to hit your account personally until, March of 2026. So just something to know. If you want to learn more about it, it's on the official blog. It's on blog.adobe.com. You can look it up, Creative Cloud Pro, and it'll walk you through everything. There's also a bunch of FAQs if you want to explore it and learn more about it. A lot happened with the tech world last week. Google I/O happened, which is the regular update for a bunch of developers, for Google, and kind of their approach moving forward. Something that I really wanted to call out here was that one of the big takeaways from this year was the fact that Google is changing their business model from rather kind of being a focus on just links as you go and you search and you get your wall of links. Instead, it is now, I think I saw on The Verge or something that says Google's new business is Google Googling Google. And basically, they're introducing and focusing on agents, which are AI sufficient like profiles that can do a bunch of stuff for you. And basically, when you go to Google now, when you search, you're not going to necessarily leave Google. It's just going to pull everything into Google for you. So that way you can go to the search bar and you can say, let me know about restaurants around me, and it'll pull it in. Or like how many gallons are, in a quart. Or no, how many quarts are in a gallon? See, it would correct you here for that. The reason I wanted to bring this up on this show specifically is this is another instance that we have of things pulling as sources rather than bringing you to the source. And something that I've said on this show time and time again is that as we move forward with the internet changing, and I think this is going to be a pivotal change, has already been happening, but it's going to be a pivotal change in the idea that like people aren't going to consume your content necessarily where you post it. And that is a big red flag for me in the way, or not a red flag, but at least a big notice to say, okay, we're going to have to really focus on the idea that you need to have branding, you need to have a voice, you need to have something that can claim your content even when it's not absorbed where it is. So if Google pulls it from a website, if Google pulls it from somewhere else, how is it still going to be able to be tracked back to you, can be owned and identifiable, to be your brand voice, your brand guidelines, your brand anything? And this could even just not even be your brand, but it could be something that could be a, like if you're a social media influencer or something like that, you just want to be able to have kind of ownership over the things you create. So when you're creating things, just think about that. Something I bring up on the show all the time is we use this purple. It is loud and it is crazy. But when you see the purple, you can say, oh, that's probably file new. And if you take this and put it somewhere else, you're still going to have your own understanding that that is similar to when you watched it on YouTube. Going outside of maybe internet things and instead going back to creators and the idea of how you create. I saw this blog post or article on Creative Block. This is coming from Ian Evenden, published yesterday, and it says, testing Samsung's latest iPad Air killer is destroying my lifetime allegiance to Apple. Now, this is a cheaper Android tablet than you would expect maybe for an iPad when you put them side by side. Something that's interesting here specifically is the fact that the S Pen, as it's called, I guess for like Samsung Pen, is the fact that it comes with the pen itself. And so that's part of the package, which is kind of interesting when you get the tablet. I'm going to put a poll in the chat for you guys, and I'm going to say, do you use a tablet? And I'm going to have the options be iPad, an Android tablet, a Wacom, or nah. And I'm really interested to hear how you guys create, if you do create with any illustration. I have my Cintiq right here that I have, and then I also have my iPad that I have on this fun kind of magnet thing that I use. Basically, they gave it a 4 out of 5 on Creative Block. I have not tested this Samsung tablet myself, but it is interesting to see that something that's running Android is something that can actually kind of compete. I know for a while that iPad has been really kind of uncontested. Way to saying, where is all of the above? I guess for artists and creators that are using a lot, just vote for the one that you probably use the most often. So in my case, I probably would end up say that it's like a Wacom. I also feel bad that I didn't bring SommetSlab into this as well. As you guys know, this is not an Adobe endorsement by any chance. This is just Ryan Selvy talking and me going through different articles. So interested to see what people are saying. Not to my well, actually, kind of to my surprise, it's split right now between iPad and Wacom. There's a few votes for Android tablets as well. Evie is saying anyone who lives in bed should be gifted an iPad or another tablet that works well on its own because, yes, I mean, I feel like I tend to use my iPad in coffee shops or when I am on the couch. So I could definitely see how that could be useful. But something to check out, the Samsung Galaxy Tab S10. Like I said, not an Adobe endorsement, just Ryan Selvy talking a little bit about it. But those are the news stories that we have today. But we have plenty of stories for you guys to go through with different resources. And we have Font of the Week coming up. So we're going to go ahead real quick, and we're going to hop into Font of the Week. Font of the Week is a weekly reoccurring segment of our show where we introduce 3 different typefaces that are available on Adobe Fonts, which are included in your membership, and we talk about which ones are our favorite, a little bit about the typefaces themselves, and maybe like where we could use them, and then we kind of have the audience vote on what they want to declare as the Font of the Week, and we put this little emoji crown on top of the winner, and we all have a great time. This week we have 3 options. We have RL Limo, SommetSlab, and Rad. We had a pretty funky one. That one was selected by Alyssa, who is in the chat, and she saw it and she's like, that one's hilarious. So that is an option. But because of that, I am going to go ahead and close the other poll. Thank you guys for your votes for that. It looks like iPad won, and it looks like that was 61% of the vote. Wacom was 30%. 7% was Android, and 0% was nah. So I guess everybody here uses tablets, which, that would be very exciting to Steve Jobs circa like 2010. So this first one is RL Limo. It is designed by Radik Luka Siwix, and it's from the font foundry Red Luca. RL Limo is a humanist typeface. And you might say, Ryan, what the heck is a humanist typeface? Humanist is a pretty popular typeface category, and it is a typeface that's inspired by Latin letter forms. So it's ones that you would see a lot in like early books. They often feature natural, organic feelings of like kind of handwritten almost, but still have this structure of a regular typeface. They have strong axis, angle serifs, and a small X height. Resembling the human hand. So what we like to do is we always like to put File New, which is the name of our show, in the color of the put File New in the typeface that we have. I said color because I was trying to look up the yellow that we use for File New in my libraries, and I just put a random yellow. But you guys can see it has a bit of wonkiness to it, which is nice. The yellow, if you're wondering, for File New is FFCC00. And this is our RL Limo defies strict classification as a sans serif, blending sharpness and softness. It consists of 6 weights with matching italics, so there's 12 styles for you. The heavier weights are suitable for display, whereas the lighter weights are suitable for paragraph text, so you can use this body copy or as a display typeface. And it has spiky terminals and generously rounded forms seen in the characters O, C, D, P, and G, which I can show you right here. O, C, D, B, P. I mean, look at that B. I think the B is really cool. It's also nice to notice that the D is notably different than the lowercase b, which is helpful for those who have dyslexia, because you'll see that the stem extends beyond the curve of the bottom of the shape in the D, but that is not there in the B, which is nice, so that if you're someone who has dyslexia, this might be a good typeface, because then you'll be able to not flip the letter forms. If you see that little part, you're like, oh, that's a D and that's a B, which is always pretty helpful and resourceful. By the way, I noticed I haven't put up the poll yet for you guys to vote, but if you guys want to vote on Font of the Week, I'm going to go put that up on the YouTube page, and you guys can vote on which one is your favorite, and we will declare a winner before the end of the show today, and that is RL Limo, SommetSlab, and Rad. And And the poll is up. So if you guys want that, you can go ahead and check that out. Oliver says Rad is definitely a body font. So yeah, we'll visit that in just a second. Penny also saw that the third font on Office Hours. So I guess we're double dipping here. Tracy says that I'm trying to prevent you guys from voting too early, which happened last week. And then people regretted some of their votes. So you know what? Maybe I'm just looking out for you guys. Also, thanks for being here again, Tracy. I know it's late for you, so it's always really nice to have you here. I know you're tuning in from England. I also just doxed you, sorry. But if you guys are tuning in from an interesting place around the world, please by all means throw it in the chat. Would love to hear. And it also helps with the chat numbers, which helps me go back to the Adobe Live team and say, hey guys, look at me. I got lots of chats. Got lots of chats in the YouTube. Evie says, we want a poll. We want a poll. Kane from Behance on YouTube, which I love that whole experience, says that iPad and Wacom for Photoshop and mouse for Adobe Illustrator. That's my workflow. Yes, it's definitely a big connection of all the different things. Wade is having me move on to SommetSlab. Thank you for keeping me on my toes here and keeping me on schedule. SommetSlab is our second typeface here. It is created by Jeremy Dooley from Insigni Design. It's a slab serif variant of the Sommet family. So Sommet is its own typeface family in its own regard, but this is the slab variant that is kind of giving a powerful and contemporary approach to the typeface. When you need more impact and power, this is said to be used when apparently layout space is at a premium. So if you need something that is condensed but powerful and strong, this is something that will be really helpful for you. It's called a slab serif because it is a serif font, but it has these really thick strokes that feel very bold, almost like a sans serif. But they jut out and kind of create these big blocks that are all around. You can see that the lowercase and uppercase F both have this curvature to it with this file new. And it's available with 6 weights and complementary italics. So same thing again. There are 12 styles here for you to choose between. And then finally, we're going to hop on into Rad. There's not too much to be said about Rad. It was created by John Ritter for Adobe Originals, and he adapted it from a skateboard alphabet that he created in college as a design assignment, and he captures the no-rules spirit of the skateboard scene. One John was rolled up when he wasn't busy studying. Obviously, you would not use this for anything besides display, probably. I mean, let's see what it looks like, actually, if you bring it way down. Yeah, it kind of disappears, hard to read, but as a display typeface, it's funny. This guy for the E has a skateboard in his arm while he's on a skateboard, and he's also pointing where he's going, holding a longboard behind him to create the N. What was it? I know Alyssa had pointed out there was like a downward dog on top of, I think it was the A. Yeah. So just to show you guys a little bit, kind of, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V. Isn't it fun, guys, that my initials are side by side in the alphabet? Did you ever realize that? Did you guys ever think about that? If not, I'm surprised you haven't. So we're going to have to size down this file new for Rad. But these are our 3 options this week, y'all. And they're fun. I have my favorite, but I won't announce my favorite until we declare a winner in just a little bit. But I want to keep this poll up for just a little bit longer. And I will hop on over to the next thing. Alyssa says, I hope to see this font used in real life one day for Rad. Yeah, of course. I know that's your big vote. Winter's saying it's a hard choice between SommetSlab and RL Limo, which I need to always keep training myself not to say Limo. I'm like, why would it be Limo? It's just Limo. Wade is laughing at Rad already winning. Tracy says, greetings from across the pond, #doxed. And Kara says, I actually do love when things like that happen with letters, with the idea that RS is next to each other on the alphabet. She said that she thinks about it all the time. And then she said JK, but you know what? I'm still going to hold her to it. When you guys say the alphabet next time and you get to RS, I hope you guys think of Ryan Selvy. So that is what we have popping for Font of the Week this week. But let's go and hop into a next pretty big section that we have. And this is going to be our resources section. All right, guys, I'm a motion designer myself. I am a freelancer outside of Adobe work, and so I like to pop around and find resources that are really great for creators of all different backgrounds and mediums. And so this is a portion of the show where I just like to highlight some of the things that have come along recently. There is a recent blog post by Ben Sandofsky, which is jumping into HDR, which you guys have probably heard a little bit about. You have probably seen it on TVs while you were shopping for TVs. If you've looked for TVs at any point, or computer monitors in the past few years, you might see it in some updates from Adobe that are having support for HDR and Premiere. You might also have seen it way back in 2010 when the first HDR mode was introduced to the iPhone camera in 2010. But basically, what is HDR? HDR stands for High Dynamic Range. And if you're wondering what High Dynamic Range is, it is the ability to kind of like merge two different levels of light and bring them together to create a strong image. You can see here that in an old school camera, and this is all being pulled directly from Ben's blog post, you can see here that on the left, if you wanted to focus on the lighting of the sunset, it's going to darken all of the images to a point where, darken all the buildings to a point where you're not going to be able to see the buildings. If you want to focus on getting detail of the buildings, it's going to overexpose the sky and blow out the sky so you lose the sunset. Same thing with when you're shooting inside, outside, and you want to get the picture of a outdoor setting and it's brighter than inside, it's going to make the inside way too dark, or it's going to make the inside way too bright. I mean, inside brighter and then outside blown out. It says dynamic range simply means the difference between the darkest and brightest bits of the scene. And you can see here that if there was a bunch of fog going over this capture, there is low dynamic range in the scene because everything is sort of gray and similar. So a solution here is HDR mode, which says in the 1990s, researchers came up with an algorithm to tackle the dynamic range problem. They started by taking a bunch of photos with different settings to capture more highlights and shadows and then bringing them together. And this is something that we talk a lot about on the show, is the fact that like your phone, you know, these little lenses, you know, we have 3 of them on my iPhone here, but and they do different things. They are a zoom and what have you. But a lot of the updates that we're now seeing in a lot of our phones are software updates. And a lot of times you're taking a picture and it's not actually the picture that you're getting the same that you would if you just had a standard camera and you were to snap it. What's happening is it's running through a lot of different algorithms and taking lots of different pictures and merging all these pictures together. This is talking about how researchers are in the 90s came up with HG values on a screen and created tone mapping. Now, I don't want to go through this entire algorithm, this entire article, because I do not want to plagiarize. I think it's a really good read, but it walks through the idea of HDR, how it's affecting your images, how sometimes when you're taking a picture you don't want it to be on, other times you do want it to be on. It talks a little bit about like when you're on Instagram and all of a sudden the screen becomes really bright because it's trying to do tone mapping and showing you and overexposing things. So very interesting read. It is very informative. You could probably get through it maybe in like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes, depending on how fast of a reader you are. But it is really interesting to see, and once you know the technology, then you can know to turn it on and adjust it or turn it off, and then you can also create your content so that you're able to then adapt and make sure that your content is being adequately consumed, because obviously it's going to be something that when you're creating things, it's going to be kind of switching between the two. And like I said, it is available in Premiere, where there's HDR for like broadcasters, but then there's also ways that they can take HDR and turn it into just standard. And it's just important to know that when you're importing and editing things, just kind of like how there's that connection of different content. So maybe you can learn something this week. And then you can say, hey, Ryan Selvy helped me learn HDR because he told me about Ben Sandofsky. So you're welcome. But maybe you're not somebody who is taking a lot of pictures and you're not in the world of capturing content in the world. Instead, you are somebody who is designing things and working on the computer a lot. There was a post on typography from Peach Calamari on Reddit that said, is there a difference between these? I was sent this in response to some artwork I sent to my printer for my job. I never knew there was a difference for the apostrophe. I also thought an inch mark was the two quotes. Is the top version apparently wrong? And it says cows with an inch mark, an apostrophe with the curved one. And the answer here is a resounding yes. There is a big difference. And I learned this, I remember, in college, and there was a very adamant teacher that was always like, you better have the right quotes, you better have the right apostrophes, otherwise I'm going to mark you down a grade. And basically, when you're using these dashes, they are curved in pretty much any language, and they are not curved in any mathematical sense, is basically how I have learned to adapt to it. There is a really good website where it can show you how to create these with your keyboard shortcuts, where you can have the straight ones or the curved ones, depending on what system you're on. For example, if you want to have like a closing single quote, and this could be like an apostrophe, on Mac you can hit Option plus Shift plus the right bracket. Or if you're on Windows, you can do Alt 0146. You use a little numpad on the side. And same thing with opening and closing quotes. If you're doing a straight double quote, like that's going to be inches. But if it's going to be on the curvature, then that's going to actually be a quote. A lot of times there are going to be systems in the programs that you're using to automatically update this. I think within Photoshop even, I think it oh, it's still in RAD. Let's get into RL Limo, see if it does it for us. And see, it says hello like that. But this wouldn't make sense if I said it's 6 inches. And so this would actually be incorrect. So what we'd want to do is we want to see if we're able to switch that out. You can sometimes go to your glyphs, and sometimes there'll be in a glyph. And let's see if they have one for straight quotes here. And the answer, guys, I'm nervous, is yes. And so you'd want to switch this. But for whatever reason, it's fighting me on it. So maybe that's a vote against RL Limo, you guys, because we're even clicking it. And it's still giving me... It's responding to the other ones here. So maybe we hit... yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't know how to fix that. You might have to even just like go in and maybe create a new one. Nope. All right. It's RL Limo, guys. Wade is in the chat over on Behance saying MLA format, the Little Brown Handbook Grammar. Let's go. Yeah. For sure. I mean, grammar is my worst enemy, but something to check out. There's a whole write-up about this. And once you see it, you're not going to be able to unsee it, especially in design when you're going down the street and there is a billboard and they're using the wrong one and you're like, that says inches or that says feet when it's supposed to be an apostrophe or a quote mark. So sorry to burden you with that information. Now that was all in Photoshop that we were talking about just now, but our friend Kladi, who is a evangelist for Illustrator, also did a cool post on the Illustrator subreddit that is very helpful. And this is all about creating swatches and info cards. Now, this might be super helpful for you if you are creating something on Illustrator for a client or something and you want to create these boxes. It's actually pretty easy and built right into the software. It says you would create a bunch of these objects. You'd go down to Window and open up your swatches panel. You would then select the colors that you want to include as a swatch. You'd create a folder for these swatches. You would name the swatch group whatever you want to. In this instance, Kladi is saying color palette. But, you know, you could call it, like, I don't know, whatever brand you're working on. Then you'll have this folder. You can see here it now has these 4 colors. If you select it and then go to the hamburger menu on the top right, you can hit create swatch info since they are the ones that are selected. It will then ask you kind of the width of the cards that you want, the height of the cards that you want. If you want to include hex colors, which is like the fun little hashtag numbers, RGB values, CMYK values. If you want to include the color name or card background, you also have the ability of the layout, the stacking, if you want it to be vertical or horizontal, if you want it to have a bunch of space in between. And then it will create these really cool info cards that are editable vector paths and live text. And it's really easy to be able to then send to client. And then, you know, then they have the hex codes, the RGB values, the CMYK values. And then you can include that in maybe your brand guidelines, or you could include that in something else that is, you know, being passed between a lot of different people. So big thank you to Kladi for posting that. It's linked in the raindrop if you need to then hop through it really quickly. But basically, you just hop into the swatches panel, you go to the hamburg menu, and then you say swatch info, and then it can create it for you, which seems like a lot of steps when you first go through it, but then it really only feels like 2 or 3 steps after you actually have it kind of worked out. 2 more resources for you guys. This one is a little bit more broad and less of a technical resource and more of a knowledgeable resource here. This is on the Adobe Express blog, coming from us from Becky Peckham, which I love that name. It says how to build customer loyalty without overcomplicating it. Everything you need to know to create loyal customers and maximize your efforts with Adobe Express. This is a really good breakdown of different things that you can take to bring customers coming back, whether this is something that you create with maybe even online merchandise, or if you're something that you're selling physical things. Some of the call outs with loyalty is punch cards or points programs, referral rewards. And this is basically all different ways that you can create this stuff in Express so that you don't have to worry about taking so much time, and you can actually keep focusing on the customers themselves. It also goes through other things that you can do, like creating thank you notes or creating milestones, badges, customer spotlight. And it's just a really good way of a little checklist of being like, how do I connect more with customers or people who are kind of absorbing things that I am creating? What can I do? This is just a fun little check mark that you can do. And I thought it was just a nice little write-up. And this is for Becky Peckham. And then the last resource that we have for you guys today is 191 social proof examples. This is just a kind of hyperlink kind of resource that is a good way to, if you're thinking of designing a website or trying to sell something, these are different proven examples of digital psychology here that can help sell your product. The very first one at the top is Wall of Impact, which is just like displaying a collection of successful metrics and micro case studies to create a clear and impactful visual of your brand achievement. You can then also cycle through all the different examples that they have. But if you scroll, it is just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling of all different things that you can do. Remote video testimonials, character portraits, social proof of ads, impact metrics, famous logos that are involved with collaborations, in-person events. So this is just a really good resource, especially if you're coming up with design for creating websites, but also if you're looking same sort of thing. If you want to have a connection with customers, if you want to be able to show that you have an impact and that the things that you are creating are impacting customers, you want to show it to new customers. There's a bunch of different approaches here that can help create some really cool stuff for you. And that is just socialproofexamples.com. Super easy to get to. And nice little resource. Now, I am going to go take a look at the font of the week. We have a bunch of votes in here, and it looks like I'm going to create a new poll. So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds to vote as we hop into Rebrand, because then I'm going to start a new poll for Rebrand. So let's hop into Rebrand. All right, guys, the winner of our font of the week, drum roll please, ending the poll with 43% of the vote goes to, unsurprisingly, Rad. Look, we'll put it on his little butt. There were 42% votes for Rad, 33% for SommetSlab, and 23% for RL Limo. And I'll let you guys know, RL Limo was my favorite. So I guess I won again. Evie's also saying great resources this week. Thank you. I hope they're helpful for you. Would love to hear how you guys use them. Also, if you guys have any resources that you use a lot, make sure you go out and you throw them in the Discord. The Discord is linked in the description here for you, but you're able to go in and you can see the file new section here where we have the chat. And we're going to be talking about this in just a second. But I also like to throw in some other stuff that sometimes doesn't make it to the show. And I would love to hear from you guys and talk when we are offline. So make sure you join if you haven't already joined. And ping me and say, hi, Ryan. Now, we are going to hop into 3 rebrands. And I want to hear what is the most successful rebrand that you think is this week's spotlight of rebrands. We're going to say rebrand win of the week. And we're going to show you guys. It is going to be Gerber. It's going to be Brawny. Or it's going to be Jaguar. I'm going to start that poll. And I'm going to say you might want to wait to vote because we're going to go through these real quick. All right. So Gerber, you guys are familiar with the Gerber baby. Did a recent update to the logo and the packaging. You can see on the left, as reported here by brand new Armin. And on the right, you can see the new one. It went into a kind of duotone blue and white with this G being the circle for holding the baby. The baby is staying the same. It is the iconic baby from, I think, like the 30s or the 20s, which was a real woman, and she is no longer with us, but is an interesting, iconic, recognizable piece of brand that they are re-implementing, and they're finding new ways to refresh the brand without it being, too stale and overdone. One thing that I also did notice is there's a little squiggle for this hair, which they have now made a little bit more dramatic, but they still kind of keep within the same vibe. You can see that the shadowing on the cheek and stuff is all the same. You might say, but Ryan, I don't even remember what the old ones look like. This is the new look that they are introducing, and this is the previous look. Some of the cool stuff that they did is they really honing in on this idea of this serif font and using it across all of their packaging. You can see that like carrot or banana blueberry puree all has this clean lowercase white typeface. The only thing that is capitalized in all of the packaging here is the G in Gerber, which is also surrounding the baby's face, which I think is a strong point, because if you're looking here at like 2 servings of superfoods or banana blueberry puree or 8 grams of whole grains per serving, all of that is in lowercase. I do see that the supported sitter up here is in uppercase, as is the pediatrician. But as far as all of the packaging itself here, it's all going to be in lowercase. I think this is a strong upgrade from this handwritten typeface. I think this is definitely a strong brand for the 2010s, but it looks just like that. It looks kind of like the 2010s. Nice to have a refrand, rebrush, and I think it's very successful. Alyssa's saying, adding in the G was smart. I feel like younger generations don't instantly know the baby is Gerber. Umacorn, however, is saying that she is not feeling the rebrand, and Wade says not a fan of the G contrast with Zebebe, spelled Z-E space B-E-B-E. I do want to make sure we get through all these, though, so I'm going to hop over to Brawny, and this is update to the Brawny Man coming from Hunter Schwartz at Fast Company. You can see at the top, it is a cropped man. It has kind of just like nose down, focused mostly on the shirt. Whereas now you're getting a lot more Brawny Man. You're getting a lot more of the face. You're getting a lot more of the whole character. It's, to me, reminiscent of Mr. Clean, and having Mr. Clean be the epitome and the face of the brand, even though the person doesn't exist. But now, you can always kind of have this character that can then be created in so many different ways now. And they updated some of the shirt. You can see that the flannel has changed a bit. And there's a big focus on this Brawny Man giving you some big old paper towels. It says, all the better to clean up spills and bulk up sales of its newest products. And Hunter Schwartz says that he thinks he's hunky, and I'm not going to focus on that, but we're going to move over to Jaguar so that you guys have time to vote. If you guys remember, we actually reported on Jaguar last a year when the Jaguar rebrand came out, but they recently fired the brand that made the rebrand happen. Apparently, a lot of people were very upset with it, and Creative Boom, Tom May, did a nice rundown as to like why this might be considered a failure. I'd be interested in hearing from you guys if it was a failure or not. A lot of the criticisms come down to things like saying that there were no cars in any of the rebranding, so people didn't understand. It kind of read sometimes as a sign of desperation because obviously Jaguar is viewed one way, and this is going so hard in the other direction that it is almost kind of like, somebody really old wearing like a graphic tee that makes them look way too young, which could be a broader identity crisis. It says there are lessons to be taken away from here, like evolution, not revolution. Maintain distinctive assets, solve emotional connection challenges, test with core audiences, ensure clarity of purpose. It's a great read, especially if you're just kind of wanting to reflect on it. It is not a science, so these are all things that are subjective. Some people really do think that this was a very successful rebrand. Other people think that this is one of the worst rebrands in the last decade. So something to definitely explore. Let's check out the chat real quick. Oliver says, I assume there weren't any cars because at the time they only had one model and they just discontinued it. And Clever is saying that the Marlboro E vibe of the Brawny Man is something to make a comparison to. Alyssa says she does think that it could be prettier, but thank God that they still use a hot man for Brawny. And Oliver is saying Jaguar quite literally didn't make any cars at the time of the rebrand. So there's that. But I'm going to keep that going for just a little bit longer. And we are going to hop into our next segment, I believe. Yes, our next segment, which is Spotlight. For Spotlight, I couldn't tell if I was going to make this a resource or a hyperlink, because this isn't Spotlight, because we are in hyperlinks. So let's switch over to hyperlink. This is Hyperlinks' fictional brand archive. It is a place for a bunch of different things that are visible in different media, online, TV shows, movies, and things that never existed. And you can see kind of the understanding behind them. So like if you look in here, by and large is here. You can click it. It'll tell you what it's featured in. It'll show you kind of the fictional history of it. What different like category it goes to. You can also go to product or sign if you want to see if it's vehicles. And it's just a fun way to be able to see different branding that's in different movies, how they're used, how thought out they are. And if you're looking for inspiration, these are all ones that obviously are still copyright because they are in different movies, but they are things you're like just interesting to see, especially if you just want to see basically how something was interpreted to be like, this needs to be a social media thing. And what do they do to make it look like social media? Just fun thing to go through. That's fictionalbrandarchive.com. We also have Internet Roadtrip as a hyperlink. This is a fun community effort created from Neil.fun, which is a guide that we are regularly revisiting. It is a Google Maps interface that has a bunch of live drivers, and you get to vote which direction you want to go. So we want to go towards Sanjay. And then you can see here that 1,152 drivers are online, and every few seconds, I think it's like 5 seconds, the option to pick which way to go is picked up, and then it will then create. You can also vote to honk the horn if you want to skip the song. You can see everywhere that they've already gone, and it's been live for like a week now or so, and you can follow the route of what people have voted for. And then there's people chatting, which is available in Discord, but not our Discord, but you guys should check it out. And it's obviously all real screenshots, and you can check it out. That is at neil.fun/internet roadtrip. And I think that's pretty cool. Another resource that could also be a hyperlink is Have I Been Pwned. They recently relaunched Have I Been Pwned. This is to check if your email address has been in a data breach. So you go here and you put in your email, and then it'll tell you if there have been any big like dark web leaks of your logins and if you need to change anything. And it's just a good way to do a security check every now and then to see how your presence and your security is online. They recently just did a big rebrand and a re-update, so I thought I would highlight that. And then now we can finally we have like 2 minutes left. We're going to do Spotlight. For our Spotlight, there is a cool article that I always like to go to. It is a series on It's Nice that does a bit of like a back and forth of what to do with much design inspiration here. And the question is, in our fast-paced world, how can we stay up to date without losing our minds when gathering favorite creators, studios, foundries, educational products, and other resources? It's easy to get overwhelmed by the endless information flow. How can we meaningfully follow design news without drowning in frustration? Number one, you can watch File New. That's always good for you. But as a response here, Katie Cadwell is saying that sometimes less is more, and it is being able to focus on the things that really are inspiring you, but also don't get overwhelmed by it. It says that I find the constant stream of design not only overwhelming, but not helpful for my creative practice. Without knowing it, you're subconsciously storing away all these projects. They could up manifesting in your own work. It's also unhelpful to compare your work in progress to finished work all the time. It can skew your perception of what your ideas could look like initially. And so basically it's saying, like, stay in touch with the world of changing things, but also don't obsess over it. Like, you know, it says that she collects typefaces I like so that she can access that particular board when she's coming to that part of the project. You can always check out Font of the Week, which is also its own thing. And hopefully that helps you guys. Also, the Adobe blog did a cool article with Eric Snowden that is about leading a global design team. They interview the senior vice president of design of Adobe and does a really good write-up. That's linked in there. And then there's also a fun write-up about a visual study of the New York City subway map. It's changed a lot over the years. We even reported recently on the change of the new subway map, which is up here. But Roger Vanderberg of Print Magazine does a very good write-up of how it's changed over the years. This is our full artboard of the episode today. We have office hours coming up next. I want to go ahead and look at the winner that we have of branding for this week. And coming in with 60% of the votes, we have the winner being Hunky Brawny. So let's go, and we're going to bring it down here. And we'll put it on his head because it actually fits, right? You guys think that the best rebrand here is Brawny. As far as the other two, how many votes did they get? 60% goes to Brawny, 30% goes to Gerber, and 10% goes to Jaguar. Thank you guys for voting. We will be back here next week, same time, same place. You can also check all of the replays on YouTube under the podcast section of Adobe Live. Stick around because we've got some office hours with Andrew and Nick coming up. And yeah, it's going to be a good one. Thank you guys all for being here. Thank you to Wade for moderating. Thank you to Alyssa and Evie, Tracy and Bruce, Oliver and Marcia, Robert. Who else? Am I missing anyone? Scream at me if I miss you. Penny. And also come hang out with me in the Discord, please. Would love to see you all. And thanks for all watching. Thanks for making it possible to do this show. All right. Stay tuned.